Okay, so this is a video to help explain the two worksheets for the 3.6 activity on Hume and Kant. The first worksheet here is on Hume, and it basically has a number of different sections where it outlines different challenges that Hume makes for epistemology in philosophy. So, for instance, the first challenge is the challenge of the uncertainty of a causation. And I asked you to do three different things here. First is to predict what that challenge might be before you do any of the reading. Second is to, after you've finished the reading, summarize Hume's point. And then third, discuss the implications of the view. Now, that means what are the consequences of this view for our knowledge, for how we would live our lives, because some of these challenges are really major challenges, and the question is, what does that mean for us? Okay, so the first challenge is the challenge of the uncertainty of causation. Okay, and the idea here is that we never actually observe any causes. All we observe are events, and we see maybe one event happening after another, and we assume, Hume thinks, that, well, that means that this event causes this other event. So, for example, let's take one pool ball hitting another pool ball into the corner pocket. Okay, so you assume that the cue ball, the white ball, hitting the other ball, let's say the 8 ball into the corner pocket, is a cause and effect relationship. But in fact, all you see is one vision of the. Sorry, that's my dog. There's somebody at the door. All you see is one vision of the cue ball hitting the 8 ball, and then another vision of the 8 ball going in the pocket, and you don't actually ever see the cause, because what does a cause look like? It doesn't look like anything. So the cause and effect relationship is an inference we make based on repeated viewings of this event or similar events like it. And Hume says there's no reason for us to make that inference. The only reason we would make that inference is because of induction, an argument from induction. And as you'll see in the second section, he doubts that as well. So the implications of this view are major. If we don't have cause and effect, that means we don't have science, because science is based on cause and effect relationships. It means we don't really have any of our common sense knowledge, because, for instance, as a little kid, probably every kid has this experience, your mom says, don't touch the element when it's hot, or don't touch the stove when it's hot because you'll get a burn. And of course you got to try it, right? So you touch the stove, ow, turns out you got burned, big surprise, but then you learn that, that hot element is the cause of pain and a burn. So you learn not to do that. So we do learn this cause and effect relationship, but Hume says, well, that's actually a habit. It's not knowledge. It's a habit we've developed, but we don't actually know anything about the relationship between stoves and burns. Okay, so moving on now to the problem of induction, which is related. Hume's point here is that the inductive reasoning we learned about in the logic unit is actually flawed, and we shouldn't think that we get knowledge from this form of reasoning. So, for instance, if I see 1,000 black crows, and I say on the basis of that all crows are black, does that mean it's impossible that I will one day come across a white crow? No, it's not impossible. So, no matter how many examples, no matter how much evidence we accumulate to make a certain conclusion, it's always possible that there will be another example or another piece of evidence that disproves that conclusion, or it shows that it's not the case that all crows are black, or it's not the case that every time the cue ball hits the 8 ball, it will cause the cue ball will cause the 8 ball to move, right? Which is the equivalent. So so the problem of induction, you see how it's related to the problem of change. Hume says we assume that induction works because we assume that the past and the future are going to be the same. We assume that the future's not going to be any different from the past. So, for instance, with the laws of physics won't change tomorrow, and we have no reason to think that the laws of physics will stay consistent. They've up till now they've stayed consistent, but why do we believe that they will continue to stay consistent? So Hume says, therefore, we can't know that the gravity won't, reverse itself tomorrow. Now, this sounds crazy. I understand it sounds absurd, and it's completely counter to common sense and completely counter to everything you learn in science. But remember, Hume is not saying that he thinks it's likely that gravity will all of a sudden, reverse direction, so that it's pushing you off the Earth instead of pulling you in. That will happen tomorrow. He's not saying that. All he's saying is that it's possible. He's raising the possibility of doubt, just like Descartes did earlier. But Hume is, really sticking with it and really wants to see, what do we actually know? And he says, well, if it's possible that it might not be true, then we don't have certain knowledge of it. And he thinks knowledge should, by definition, be certain. Okay, so moving on now to Hume's point about morality. Now, Hume was skeptical that morality was rational. And he said, instead, morality comes from our emotions. And he said morality is a lot like taste. So, for instance, some people like vanilla ice cream, other people like chocolate ice cream. It's not really a matter of debate regarding which ice cream flavor is better. Like, you might like one flavor over another, but if you get into a debate about it, then it goes nowhere. And I hear this in my class sometimes. I heard it in my class this morning that, someone says, oh, I like this food, and oh, you're crazy, I hate that food. But it's just, 1 point over and over again. It's not an actual debate like you guys did for the Wikipedia debate. So if that's all morality is, then there's no reasoning to it. It's just, I got my beliefs, you got yours. It's just a matter of taste, and we'll leave it at that. Now, that's one way to approach morality, but we'll see that in the ethics unit, we'll see that there are other ways. So don't think that, that's the only way in which we can explain morality. Okay, and the implications of this, of course, are major. If morality is just emotion, then it doesn't seem to have the same weight or the same, I guess, importance that it might have if it's, actually rational and something that everyone is obligated to do and must do. Okay, so moving on now to Hume's challenge on the self and his bundle theory of the self. So Hume is challenging here the idea that of Descartes' cogito ergo sum. Okay, so he thinks the idea that the self is a thinking thing doesn't make much sense, or at least we can doubt whether or not the self is a thinking thing, because we assume that just because we're thinking, there must be an entity doing the thinking. That's the cogito ergo sum. But we need not make that assumption. Descartes says all we really know is that thinking exists. Sorry, I mean Hume says all we really know is thinking exists, and everything else is an unjustifiable inference. So basically, according to Hume, the self, what we call the self, is just a bundle of sense impressions. So the sensations that I get, that, what I'm looking at something, I'm smelling something, I'm hearing something, and all those things sort of strung together. And then finally, the habits that we form on the basis of those sensations. So there's no reasoning involved in any of this. It's just we form habits based on all of the senses that we have, and it's a very sort of minimalist, I guess you could say, idea of the self. What are the implications for this view? Well, it seems to suggest that really there is no unified self. And the idea of a unified self, that you are a specific thing, that you have a soul that is eternal, as Plato would say, that all is all an illusion. And in reality, it's just you're just a bundle of sensations. So Hume can be frustrating. I understand that, especially because he's so skeptical and he sort of pulls at the threads of what we think we know. And that's why Kant is an interesting person to study, and so are the philosophers of science, because they actually try to counter some of these skeptical points that Hume makes, and they try to say, you know what, maybe we don't need to be quite this skeptical, and maybe we can be satisfied and sure that we have some knowledge, even if it's not absolute certain knowledge, and even if some of Hume's criticisms remain, and Hume still has a following, and still has a strong arguments on a lot of the epistemological and metaphysical points that he makes. So, all right, I'm going to stop that video here now, and I actually am running out of time. I'm only allowed 15 minutes on these videos, and so I'm going to post a second video for the Kant worksheet. Okay, thanks very much.